The mosque received a series of harassing and Islamophobic phone calls. It called the threats alarming. City police said the Major Crimes Unit is investigating an incident involving a mosque this week, but no arrests have been made. CBC News is not naming the mosque because it fears more harassment. A spokesperson with the National Council says the calls have been happening over several days, and that it's put the city's Muslim community on high alert.
The comments that were made to the mosque included the notion that Muslims have a religious obligation to be traitors to the Canadian state. I would say that across Canada, these incidents are increasingly becoming routine.
The Premier said on social media he was deeply troubled and that this sort of hate has no place in the province. The Prime Minister also condemned the Winnipeg incident, as well as another one in Ontario. The Council says Islamophobia has been on the rise, and it's calling for more proactive rather than reactive measures to prevent situations like this from escalating. Arturo Chang, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba saw more than double the national average of diabetes-associated leg amputations between 2020 and 2023. That's according to the Canadian Institute for Health Information. The report took a deeper look at diabetes care across Canada. The numbers show age-standardized rates of diabetes-associated leg amputations were 19 per 100,000 in Manitoba. That compares with 9 per 100,000 nationally. Jeff Haynes with CIHI says it can be challenging to draw comparisons across different provinces and territories, but remoteness of some Manitoba communities may play a role.
What we see in our analysis is that, individuals who live in remote or very remote areas will tend to have higher rates of leg amputations. And Manitoba in particular has, I think, 5% of the population maybe live in remote or very remote areas, whereas in Canada, the average is about 2%.
Hines says amputations are in many cases avoidable with access to early screening and appropriate clinical care. The Winnipeg School Division is dealing with close to 1,200 students more this fall than expected. It had budgeted for 28,400 students. Now they have 29,600 signed up. Superintendent Matt Henderson says they've had to juggle classrooms and staff.
We've opened up 6 additional kindergarten classrooms and a few early years classrooms as well, where we can, because not every school has the space to open up a new classroom. And where we haven't had that opportunity, we've added more learning support, we've added more English second language teachers.
Henderson says immigration is one factor in the increase, but there are also a number of homeschooled students who are coming back to class. Henderson says the areas seeing the largest increases are the inner city, West End, and Northwest Quadrant. New documents show the Manitoba government posted a deficit in this last fiscal year of just under $2 billion. It's the largest non-pandemic deficit in the province's history. The audited results for the 23-24 fiscal year show a major factor was a drop in revenue from Manitoba Hydro, where dry weather and low water levels turned an expected profit into a loss. New collective agreements in the public sector led to higher spending than planned, as did a lawsuit settlement over payments to kids in the child welfare system. The NDP government has promised to balance the budget by 2027. Finance Minister Adrian Salas says they're still looking to meet that target.
We have work to do to respond to the challenges that the last government left us. So that involves the important work that I think all Manitobans are doing right now, which is belt tightening at a government level. We understand that Manitobans expect us to do the same.
The province is getting some help this year in the form of equalization payments from the feds, which are increasing by $840 million. 3 boys who were allegedly abducted by their mother in Ontario roughly 10 months ago have been found safe. Astrid Schiller and her children were first reported missing last December. In June, Manitoba RCMP received a report they were at the Boissevain port of entry at the Manitoba-U.S. border. She was taken into custody and the kids were put in care. But Schiller was released because the warrant didn't extend to Manitoba. All of them disappeared again until they were spotted in Fort Capel this week. The kids will be reunited with family in Ontario. Schiller remains in custody in Brandon. 11 housing projects have received funding from a City of Winnipeg program. One of the projects will redevelop the former Parkview Place building near Central Park. The former long-term care facility has been vacant for 2 years now. It will be turned into a 180 units of transitional, social, and affordable housing. Also, a sister project to the Market Lands development will go up on the north side of the property. The site across from City Hall was once the home of the Winnipeg Police Headquarters and Civic Parkade. The city is giving out $25 million through its program, which it received from the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund. The 11 projects receiving funding will create more than 1,100 units of housing. Students in Winnipeg are learning about residential schools and the importance of reconciliation this month. Monday marks the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. At Mulvey School, one student is sharing her culture to help others learn. CBC's Felicia Adam has her story.
For Ab's keeper, dancing is how she's reclaiming her Ojibwe heritage. The drum beat and the sound of her jingle dress cones filled the library at Mulvey School.
I just love doing it, and it helps me with my healing of the stuff I've gone through. And I just love doing it.
The grade 6 student began dancing almost 2 years ago, most of her knowledge self-taught.
For a 10-year-old, that's a lot of knowledge that she's taken in the last half a year, almost 2 years, and yeah, she's teaching me.
Her mother, Candace Bowman, cries every time she sees her daughter dance. She believes their ancestors would be proud.
When she dances, she just doesn't dance for herself. She dances for everybody that couldn't come home or got their culture taken away from them or wasn't allowed to learn about it.
Keepers dance, a part of commemorating the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, a day important for many students.
It will help remember those kids who had to suffer through residential school.
Truth and reconciliation is very important. Like, you should always celebrate it. Always.
For Keeper, her goal is not only to continue learning about her culture, but also to continue to share and teach others about it.
It's to show my ancestors that we weren't allowed to dance and practice because they took away from us. I think it's important I dance here today on this day because to show my ancestors what I could do and what's allowed now.
She's also inviting others to learn about the tradition, saying anyone can take part no matter where they're from. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
One of Brandon's busiest streets is getting some major upgrades. Since mid-September, parts of 18th Street have been reduced to single-lane traffic. Some businesses say the ongoing construction on the road is hurting sales. M&M Food Market owner Don Smithson is fed up.
They've been relentless into not even notifying us when they are going to be closing our accesses. This summer we had them close both of our entrances so you couldn't even get into the mall. We don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. They don't update us at all. They haven't updated us at all in 3 years.
A city spokesperson says it's working with the province to minimize roadwork pains for traffic and businesses. Construction is expected to be completed sometime in October. Riley Lachak is in now, our weather specialist. And Riley, I feel like a bit of a broken record just saying it's hot. It's hot.
Yeah.
It's the end of September and it's hot.
And you know what? I think the silver lining is I think construction season may be extended a little bit because of these warm temperatures, not freezing as early as it usually does. Have a look at some of these record highs from yesterday. 31, just about 31 degrees in Fisher Branch, Gimli, both breaking records from 2014, going back to 97 to find temperatures like this for places like Grand Rapids and Norway House and Flin Flon, breaking a record by a half degree from 1950. So that just gives you a bit of a taste of some of the heat that we felt yesterday, really right across the province. Still did have some heat across parts of the southwest today, 26 in Brandon, 27 in Melita, 23 is where we got to in Winnipeg, right on my forecast high for today, and 18 in Thompson. Thompson, where we have seen a couple of showers passing through northern Manitoba through the night tonight. Definitely a lot less windy today as well. 11 degrees, clear skies overnight tonight in Winnipeg. Waking up to another sunny one tomorrow, 13 degrees. We keep the light winds right throughout the day. Northwest at 10, 26 degrees, Brittany, and we're looking at temperatures like this continuing through the weekend. More on that coming up in about 10 minutes.
All right. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Thousands are fleeing Lebanon as fighting between Israel and Hezbollah escalates. We'll hear from Winnipeg's Lebanese community about their fears for family and hopes for peace. That story after the break. As fighting between Israel and Hezbollah escalates, thousands are fleeing Lebanon. Hezbollah has been firing rockets into Israel in support of Hamas, targeting military targets. Now, Israeli forces have intensified their bombardment in southern Lebanon, sparking fear in Winnipeg's Lebanese community for family and hopes for peace. CBC's Mike Arsenault has the story.
Abdullah Abu Murad scrolls social media as bombs explode in his homeland of Lebanon. On Monday, Israel launched airstrikes along Lebanon's southern border, killing hundreds. Abu Murad says he felt like this was coming because Lebanon has been supporting Gaza.
Our hearts are with the people of Palestine, and we know we're going with them, whatever we can do to help. And now we're a part of it. Now we're going to get in the middle of it, and it seems to be getting worse and worse for Lebanon.
The Israeli military launched more airstrikes in Beirut on Friday afternoon, where a series of massive explosions leveled buildings. Abu Murad has family who lives in Lebanon and says they can hear everything.
They're waking up in the night just bombarded with explosions, and all the kids are waking up scared, crying, and then you move further to those places and you see the destruction that's happening.
Israel says it's targeting Hezbollah, a Lebanese paramilitary group. Hezbollah has been firing rockets into Israel since last October in support of Hamas. Israel's military says Monday's airstrikes were targeting Hezbollah in southeast Lebanon, and Friday's attacks were targeting the headquarters in Beirut.
George Shama is owner of Beau Rivage on Cordon Avenue. He was born in Lebanon before moving to Winnipeg 40 years ago. His sister lives in a small Lebanese town close to recent airstrikes.
It's 2 kilometers. The devastation was a big bomb just dropped on them. Leveled everything in that area within 200 meters.
Shama believes Hezbollah has ruined Lebanon, and he doesn't want to see any more lives lost.
I'm looking for a peaceful ending, however that happened, because buildings you can rebuild, but people you cannot rebuild if they die.
Abu Murad just found out a family friend died in Friday's bombings in Beirut. He says Lebanese people are resilient, but he's scared.
I think we're getting into a war that we don't want to be in, and it's you feel for your people, right?
Israel rejected global calls for a ceasefire earlier this week, heightening fears of an all-out war. Mike Arsenault, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Israel says it's carried out what it's calling a precise strike against Hezbollah leadership in Lebanon. It targeted the group's headquarters in a suburb of Beirut. CBC's Margaret Evans has the latest.
The moment massive Israeli airstrikes hit the Lebanese capital, sending plumes of smoke up over Beirut's southern reaches. Smoke as thick as the fear on the ground that a full-scale war is now inevitable. It was the most powerful Israeli attack on Beirut in the conflict so far. Rescue workers arrived to search flattened buildings in the Dahya, the densely packed southern neighborhood known as a Hezbollah stronghold. An Israeli military spokesman soon appeared with a prepared statement, calling the attack a precise strike on the Iran-backed militia.
Hezbollah's central headquarters was intentionally built under residential buildings in the heart of the Dahya in Beirut, as part of Hezbollah's strategy of using Lebanese people as human shields.
Unconfirmed reports that the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah was the target have been swirling on social media. Tens of thousands of Lebanese have already been displaced by cross-border attacks, but the numbers have increased dramatically since Monday, when Israel escalated its air campaign. Many of the displaced have come to Beirut, housed in schools and public buildings. The world is in ruins, says Noha Jamal. There are people still under the rubble in her village, she says. Malak Mahmoud Saleh fled with her family on Monday after Israeli strikes destroyed her home. People are mentally drained now, she says. I'm taking medication to stay calm, but we will return back home victorious. She wants Hezbollah to keep fighting as long as Israel keeps fighting. My opinion is that if they stop, she says, we will stop. That seems far less likely on either side than ever before. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Beirut.
Weather specialist Riley Lachuk is back. And Riley, we've had a bit of everything the past week, but overall, it's been a really nice September.
Everything but snow.
Pretty much, yeah. We're not even going to say that word yet. Take it back.
We're actually on track to having what could be one of the hottest Septembers on record for Winnipeg, at least, and a few other communities in Manitoba. I crunched some of the numbers for you. Here they are from Environment Canada. So the mean temperature, which we're looking at in terms of the forecast highs, or the daily maximum temperatures, the daily minimum temperatures, average those up throughout the month of September. So far, up to yesterday, we were at 17.9 for that average mean temperature for the month of September. The record was 17.6. You don't have to go too far back to find that, though. That was in 2009. And yes, we do have some colder weather as we head into October, which I'll get into because things are going to change very quickly as we get through the next several days here in Manitoba, but we still have a couple more days of some of this warm weather left to go here. So mainly sunny skies today, bit of cloud into northwestern and north central Manitoba, a few scattered showers across the north, even as far east as the Hudson Bay coast today. That pushes out as we get through the overnight hours. And then we're back to a mainly sunny sky, a little bit of instability, riding some of those upper level winds as we get into the middle part of Saturday for parts of northern Manitoba. But for the rest of us, boy, oh boy, not a lot to talk about. Mainly sunny skies, even into northwestern Ontario. Things change as we get into Sunday and into Monday. You can see this area of low pressure begins to move in. Some cloud builds in as we start the day on Monday. And this cold front will sweep through, bringing us a fairly good chance of showers as we get through later Monday here in southern Manitoba. But what it will certainly do is really pull our temperatures down back to more seasonal conditions as we get through into the day on Tuesday. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Great weekend to get outside if you're maybe trying to find a corn maze or a scarecrow or something. I know several of the corn mazes are open already. Lovely weekend for that. 26 degrees for Saturday, northwest winds, sunny and warm, but we get the wind returning on Sunday, 27 degrees with a mix of sun and clouds. Then I mentioned a bit of a cool down on the way. So windy on Monday, 21 degrees, and then look at that temperature difference into Tuesday, 15 for a high, 14 for Wednesday, Brittany. It had to end. I know. This extended summer had to end.
I know, and those single-digit overnight lows.
Temperatures like these continuing into the later part of next week as well.
Get outside this weekend.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Riley. Still ahead, Hurricane Helene unleashes a path of destruction across parts of the southern United States. After making landfall as a Category 4 hurricane in Florida, it's moved north. The very latest next. A top CSIS official provided new insight today into foreign interference in Canada's elections. It came at the inquiry looking into ways to stop other countries from meddling in Canadian politics. CBC's Catherine Tunney is covering proceedings.
As a public inquiry studies whether Canada can protect and thwart against foreign interference, we're learning some new information about the threat. Today, in the hot seat are 6 former and current officials with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, or CSIS. And as part of their testimony, we got to see a document that the spy agency had put together with some bullet points and some examples of what it calls significant examples of suspected foreign interference. Now, a few things on that list are things that we've already heard here at the inquiry, but there are 2 examples that CSIS highlighted are new information. I'll let one of the senior officials explain to you what one of those examples is.
The paragraph indicates a foreign government, a particular foreign government, undertook several actions, including interference to reduce the likelihood of a specific candidate, in this instance, a Liberal candidate, from being elected federally. It was suspected that the foreign government sought to thwart the candidate's bid due to their how the foreign government perceived the candidate's stance on issues related to that foreign government.
There's also another case that CSIS officials flagged as new information to the inquiry, and that's that a former parliamentarian is suspected of having worked to influence parliamentary business on behalf of a foreign government. Now, in both of these examples, it's not clear who the foreign power is or who the people involved are, but it does give the inquiry a little bit more to chew on as they work towards their final report. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Ottawa.
Trying to figure out if that sore throat is just a common cold is tricky without reliable rapid test kits. Adding to that worry, wastewater data from some provinces suggests high levels of COVID-19 activity. Jennifer Yoon looks at what Canadians need to know as the next cold and flu season looms.
So just got the shipment yesterday.
COVID rapid tests used to be easy to find and often free. Now, even pharmacists have trouble tracking them down.
I have some boxes left, actually, because I found the supplier.
Since he stopped getting free tests from the province, he's had to turn customers away.
Prior to finding this supply, we were just telling people that we don't have and to look in other pharmacies.
So how many do you have in there?
I have 2 big ones in that one, and I got 10 small ones in that one. Okay, so we got this one.
This pharmacist expects they'll be sold out by the end of the day.
We keep increasing the supply that we order, but they're still all going.
Health Canada stopped handing out free tests to provinces and territories in May. It tells CBC News there are no plans to replenish the federal inventory after it's depleted, even as temperatures drop and respiratory viruses start to make the rounds.
If you look at the top 5 respiratory viruses that are circulating, it's SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV-2.
The latest numbers from Health Canada suggest COVID-19 levels are holding steady, but this infectious disease specialist thinks it's an underestimate.
If you don't have rapid tests, you don't diagnose. If you don't diagnose, you don't go seek treatments, especially if you need it, and we also don't get diseases under control.
Experts say it's the most vulnerable who pay the price.
Without that positive test, older adults may not get that treatment that they need to keep them out of hospital.
If you have expired tests, experts say most work for a few months after the expiry date, but false negatives are a risk. To get new tests, you might need to shop around and visit several pharmacies. You can also check if your province has special clinics with rapid tests. And if you're at higher risk of severe illness from COVID-19, you might also qualify for PCR testing in some provinces. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Montreal.
Neighborhoods were underwater and at least 33 people are dead across 4 states in the southeastern U.S. in the wake of Hurricane Helene. The CBC's Katie Nicholson reports.
This is the part of Florida's Big Bend that was hit the hardest last night when Hurricane Helene made landfall as a Category 4 storm with those 215 kilometer-an-hour winds. And you can see some of the destruction here, just structures peeled apart. And you see that as you drive through this region, trees are toppled everywhere. In this particular area, that storm surge was also an issue. You can see it's still fairly flooded here. I talked to a woman down the road. She had been here since 1969. She and her husband listened to the evacuation orders when they got back today. They saw that the floodwaters had smashed through the windows of her home, and it looks like the water level came up to about 6 feet. Just about everything in her home completely destroyed. We've also noticed here a lot of search and rescue choppers. That's because Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says that a lot of people didn't listen to those evacuation orders. They need to make sure everyone is safe and accounted for. We heard from Governor Kemp in Georgia that there were fatalities coming out of the flash floods that they also experienced today, sending crews out to try and rescue people, including a first responder who apparently also died. And as this storm, this monster storm, continues north, it has also created flooding conditions in North Carolina. There are fears of more landslides. There's already been one reported landslide in North Carolina. And that whole Appalachian mountain area that connects Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee, also an area of concern. This is a monster storm, and it is not done with the U.S. quite yet. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Steinhatchee, Florida.
There was more startling testimony during the last day of hearings into the implosion of the Titan submersible. The vessel suffered a catastrophic failure while carrying a group of wealthy passengers on a trip to the Titanic in June of 2023. A former employee of the Titan's owner, OceanGate, raised concerns about operating without a Coast Guard inspection. He says the company's CEO told him, quote, he'd buy a congressman. CBC's Heather Gillis reports.
After 9 days of witness testimony, hearings into the Titan submersible's implosion, more than 3 kilometers underwater, are now over. But not before one last round of shocking testimony. Today, former OceanGate employee Matthew McCoy told the hearing he was concerned Titan wouldn't be inspected by the Coast Guard and that the company was skirting rules to get paying passengers aboard its subs. McCoy, a former Coast Guard enforcement officer who worked for OceanGate for 6 months in 2017, says he brought those concerns to CEO Stockton Rush over lunch one day.
He said I would buy a congressman and make basically the problems would go away at that point in time. And that is direct. That will stand in my mind for the rest of time.
McCoy says he was aghast and quit the next day.
And we brought this team together, frankly, because OceanGate was operating without a plan.
The U.S. Coast Guard captain who led the search and rescue mission for Titan also took the stand today. Jamie Fredericks says when the distress call came in, the U.S. Coast Guard had aircraft already in St. John's for International Ice Patrol, a program set up, coincidentally, in the wake of the Titanic's sinking. He got them searching right away. He says they mobilized 70,000 pounds of equipment to St. John's in mere days, all for the deep diving ROV they needed to search the ocean floor. The international efforts to find the sub, he says, were unprecedented. Then, investigators dropped this piece of evidence. During questioning last year, the captain of the Polar Prince said in hindsight, he thought he felt the ship shudder around the same time Titan communications were lost. Info, Fredericks says, would have changed things.
That's the first I've seen that. My initial reaction is if that was information they have, to me personally, it'd be unconscionable that they would not share that with the unified command. It certainly would have been information that could have had a drastic impact on the search efforts.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Coast Guard's next step is to comb through a mountain of evidence and prepare a report to try to prevent something like this from happening again. The Transportation Safety Board in the U.S. is also going to do a report, and they are going to try to pinpoint the probable cause of the implosion. In this country, the Transportation Safety Board here is also writing a report, but they can't say when it'll be done. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
A new second-stage women's shelter in one Manitoba First Nation is enabling women and their children to transition to a life of safety, free from abuse. The latest on the opening and why it was so desperately needed. Straight ahead. This week marked a milestone for Fisher River Cree Nation, the opening of a new transitional shelter for women. The community has struggled with increases in domestic violence cases in recent years, and this new shelter is being hailed as a beacon of light for women seeking refuge from violence and abuse. Katina Cochran is the Executive Director for the First Nation Healing Centre and joins me today. Hi, Katina.
Hi, Brittany.
Thanks so much for being here. So let's start with the grand opening that happened earlier this week. Tell us about Kapapuk and what is being offered to women that come to the shelter.
Yeah, we're really excited to have our brand new building come up, and we had our grand opening on Tuesday for this center called Kapapuk, which means butterfly in Cree. And the whole story behind that is that, that when that butterfly is in a cocoon, it's sheltered and protected and taken care of until it's strong enough to fly into a beautiful butterfly. So that's how we came up with the name for this second stage transitional housing program here in our community.
That's really a beautiful story to how you guys got the name. So can you explain to me a little bit about the programs that you're going to be offering and how this center is really going to help women that are fleeing really terrible situations?
Yeah, so basically it's a second stage. So it's secondary after emergency shelter. So we currently do have an emergency shelter here in our community that services 3 different communities, which is Fisher River, Peguis, and Keenan-Jishtigan. And then we also extend into the Interlake region, and we accept transfers from up north as well. So we service multiple communities in Manitoba. And we also offer in-house programming that is like a 4-week program for women that are fleeing violence and wanting to learn a little bit more about who they are and, traumas that they might be carrying in their families and how to move forward in a good direction. So our plan is that once they complete the programming within the emergency shelter program, which is 50 days, where we're only allowed to keep them for 50 days. And then now that we have the second stage, they're able to, for those that fit the criteria for long-term housing, they can live into the second stage program for up to 1 year. So that way it gives us a little bit more time to work with the women and their children and get counseling, maybe access IDs, bank accounts, get some training and work experience and goal setting, and then hopefully, they're able to move into independent living on their own after they complete the second stage housing program. So we're looking forward to this opportunity because we've been in operation for 30 years and we've never really had access to second stage housing here in the province. We've had to really depend on our sister shelters with the province and inquire whether or not they've had any open units for some of the women that we worked with here in our communities. So this is a big opportunity for us to expand our services into second stage housing.
Katina, when I spoke with you earlier, you spoke to me about the increase in domestic violence in the community and how that was noticed a few years ago. What did that look like and what were the numbers like?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, domestic violence is experienced by everyone. You could be a teacher, doctor, doesn't matter. Everyone experiences gender-based violence or intimate partner violence. But we did see a huge spike where our stats tripled actually during COVID. And so you would phone around and try to help women get into shelters. All our shelters were full in the province. I think the government noticed this in 2021, 2022. That's when they released this stream of funding. It was called Indigenous Shelters and Transitional Housing Initiative. It was for $742 million, I believe, to build new shelters across Canada. And that's specifically for women that are experiencing gender-based violence or fleeing violence in some way for them and their children. So we've seen that need, especially during COVID, and it was a tough time, during COVID and having to do this type of work. We got through it, but now we feel we're equipped with this additional funding and our expansion into services, so we're able to make sure we can help at least 5 more families secure safe housing for the year.
Katina, we wish places like this didn't need to exist, but I'm so thankful that these women will have a place to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Some incredible work being done up there
Yeah.
in Fisher River by that team.
Beautiful.
My favorite part of our newscast, and I know it's a viewer favorite because we hear about it every day and we love to hear from you guys about it. What's it going to be like if we got to take the pooch out tomorrow?
It's sunny, warm, and pretty calm winds tomorrow.
So you might need like your own personal fan.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to feel more like summer,
Yeah.
especially through parts of southern Manitoba throughout the weekend. And in fact, I'll get into this as we get into your Sunday forecast. Could crack 30 in parts of southwestern Manitoba.
Soak it
again.
up.
Here's your dog walking forecast for Saturday. This is Charlie. Thank you, Betty, for sending this picture in. Betty says that Charlie was a rescue dog and is now in his forever home, which is a lovely story. Talkback at cbc.ca is where you can keep sending your pets to me, your dogs, your cats, your pups, your rabbits, anything like that. Light winds first thing in the morning, 13 degrees in Winnipeg, 26 by the afternoon with northwest winds at 10. And we keep those relatively light northwest winds as we get into the evening as well, 23 degrees by the time we get to about supper time tomorrow. Here is the remnants of what was Hurricane Helene, now spinning through parts of the, I guess, the more central part of the United States. Taking a bit of a closer look in here, Ohio into upstate New York, even Detroit, seeing some of the outer bands of the cloud cover and some showers in places like Windsor through Norfolk County into the Niagara region and GTA. Could even see maybe a couple showers as a result of this as we get through the weekend, but still packing quite a punch in terms of rain and wind as we head into the overnight hours tonight. Here's what our forecast looks like for tonight. Single digits through the southwestern part of the province. Clear skies overnight tonight, really all around. We're looking at 8s for Brandon and Verdun and Swan River. Peguis at 11-10 in both Red Lake and Dauphin. Single digits and maybe a couple of scattered showers through the far northern part of the province. 6 in Thompson, 8 in Lynn Lake. Maybe a couple more scattered showers yet to come for northern Manitoba tomorrow. Otherwise, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds for the most part. Temperatures around 20 degrees for places like Flin Flon and the Pas. Into the south, sunny skies tomorrow, calm winds. Don't have a lot to talk about. Temperatures up around 27 for Melita. But look at what happens as we get into Sunday. 32s for Brandon and Melita. 29 for Dauphin and Brittany. We're in the 20s as well into northwestern Ontario. Your 7-day forecast is still ahead.
Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, still ahead as young hockey players across the province hit the ice for a new season. Some leagues in Ontario are looking for ways to fight an age-old sports problem. People yelling at referees. More on that straight ahead. Yelling at the refs is about as old as hockey itself. But some leagues in Ontario are trying something new to get parents and coaches to tone it down this season. Lane Harrison explains how.
Anyone who's been involved in minor hockey knows emotions run high, and some leagues are trying to bring them down this year. Especially when it comes to the officials who keep the game moving, who often receive unsolicited negative feedback.
It's something that can be difficult, and a lot of people struggle with it.
18-year-old Harry Smith is a ref with the Greater Toronto Hockey League. Now a seasoned official, he still has early memories of being yelled at on the job.
I was a bit nervous, but after the game, when I went home and I thought, you know what, like, I'm a 15-year-old guy and it's a grown man or a grown woman yelling at me right now, and I'm not in the wrong. I'm just trying to do my job, right? And if they have a problem with that and they get personal, that's on them, that's not on me.
But he says every ref doesn't handle it so well.
And when there's a lot of pressure being put on them, when they're just trying to learn, trying to figure out how to do things, it's really difficult. So people tend to give it up.
That's something both the GTHL and Ontario Minor Hockey Association are trying to stop this season. In the OMHA, teenage officials will wear green armbands, while first-year officials wear them in the GTHL.
The green armband is a reminder to parents that, kids and officials are just getting started officiating, especially at the younger levels, and it's a reminder to them that the person they may be getting emotional with is only a child or a young youth themselves.
The GTHL piloted the idea in house leagues last winter and is expanding the program this fall. The OMHA is bringing in the armbands for the first time this year.
We've certainly had situations over the last couple of years where team officials have actually come on the ice and tried to physically get at the officials, not so much to want to harm them, but to make sure they understand that they're screaming their frustration at those team officials, those on-ice officials.
When it comes to what's driving the bad behavior, one expert says it's a mix of factors, including the way some now approach the game.
We do see sort of a trend towards earlier and earlier specialization in sport, which I think that plus kind of this nonsense of like a professionalization of youth sport, that there's this sense that there's more investment from families, more time, more money. And I think that can lead to like a heightened sense of importance, that this is really, really important.
Looking ahead to this season, Smith thinks the expansion of the GTHL armband program will be a positive for the league.
Everyone does it. We speak before we think, and that happens. But I think the real initiative with the green armband is, okay, now there's something here telling me and reminding me that it's a human, that it's someone that's trying to learn something new.
Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, here is something else that is happening this weekend if you're looking for some weekend plans. Nuit Blanche happening in Winnipeg tomorrow night. Several things that you can take in related to arts and culture, of course, as the sun sets in the evening and after dark. So we're looking, as that gets underway at 6 o'clock, 24 degrees in Winnipeg. The winds lighten up even as we get through the evening. So by 9 o'clock, northeast winds at 5, and by midnight down to 12 degrees. So you may want to pack a light sweater if you're taking in any of the festivities over the evening tomorrow night. 26 degrees in Winnipeg tomorrow. Good chance we'll see some showers through Monday. Then temperatures much, much closer to seasonal into next week. Thursday, a high of 13 degrees. Here's some weather photos for you this evening, courtesy of our own Jillian Taylor and the brightness in her garden. You can send your photos to talkback@cbc.ca.
She should be bringing some of that in, Jillian.
Exactly. Well, this next story literally is one of warmth. For more than 2 decades, a group of seniors in Windsor, Ontario have spent hundreds of hours knitting thousands of tiny hats.
It's all to keep local newborns warm. Here's tonight's Daily Lift.
Hi, I'm Sheila Blair Mosley. I'm with the Rotary Club of Windsor Roseland, and I coordinate our Knitting for Newborns program. We committed 20 years ago to knit hats for all the newborns at the hospital. My naivety, I never had any idea that over 4,000 babies a year were being born at the hospital. It was set up to encourage seniors to have a reason to connect to the community, and there's nothing like babies and old people. That's a match made in heaven. We always have a steady supply of babies, and we have a steady supply of old people. As soon as a baby is born, they're moving from an environment of 98.6 into probably 72 to 74. That big drop in temperature is tough on the little guys, so they plop a hat on them as soon as they come into the world.
I'm Giselle Sege. I've worked at Windsor Regional Hospital for over 20 years. Windsor Regional was reporting about 5,000 births a year. The 20 or so knitters that we have right now, I think they managed to knit double that. And nothing goes to waste, by the way, in case you're wondering, well, you have a lot more hats than babies. Some years that's true. We support some of the physicians who do work internationally. We send some to Ghana. It's a fun thing to be able to give a baby something, you know, right from the hospital.
Parents are thrilled to have them, especially during COVID when there was no visitors. It was a very joyous time and they didn't have a whole lot of people to celebrate. It was a message from the community that we were out here and we cared about them and their baby.
I couldn't love this more.
I know.
And Sheila, I'm coming to Ontario so you can teach me how to knit.
Exactly. You know, I did have the question, like, how are they able to keep up with demand? But clearly they have no problem with
No problem. Well done, ladies.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next week.
Again on Monday.